friends, reflectors, and my dear guests. Good morning and welcome to the latest edition of Inspired Talks Event and Reflections. We have Professor Rajesh Nair from the US with us today for enlightening us. Having been respectful to his time zone, I appreciate Professor for joining us today. Without wasting time, let me introduce Mr. Arun Das for the welcome note. Arun, you may please proceed.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, dear reflectors. My name is Arindas and I am a software engineer from Mobility team. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here today to welcome one of the most inspirational personalities, a designer, engineer, entrepreneur, and educator. Professor Rajesh is known for his many talents. He has wide range of experience in technology, business, and education. His mission is to turn the youth of rural and underserved communities into future innovators and entrepreneurs by transforming them and in turn their communities. What a remarkable mission, isn't it, dear reflectors? Professor Rajesh, we are very pleased to have you here with us. Thank you for your thoughtful gesture of being here with us at this hour. Even though it is close to midnight for you, please accept our humble gratitude. Dear reflectors, we know that we know the key ingredient for success is inspiration and enthusiasm. It is true that we will face challenges, but if we are inspired, we will dare it and keep surmounting. When we are not motivated, even a tiny obstacle can seem like a huge barrier. Professor Rajesh will bring inspiration to our day today as he shares his inspiring experiences. On behalf of everyone in Reflections, I welcome you, sir. All of us are eager to listen to your stories. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know most of you are in Kerala. I'm actually from Kerala. I was born and brought up in Chirangiri, which is not too far from you. I actually went to Sainik School in Karakotam. So it is still far, close enough to Techno Park. So just to give a short history, how I got here. A kid from a village born in the 60s, in a little village, to a lower middle class family. How the hell did one get to this point? And because the story is important because it connects back to the work that I do. From when I was a little kid, I got involved in creating things, designing things. I did not know what anything was, but you just go learn and try things and fail. And I used to make my own little transistor radios and things like that when I was in middle school. Did not know what anything was. Just look at the circuit and then see if you can connect it all up and see if you can listen to things. And I was popular in school because I could make all these kind of things. Went to study engineering. I studied at Indian Institute of Science. I did bachelor's in electrical engineering and master's in product design because I wanted to be a gadget designer. And I came here to UMass Amherst some 34 years back. I'm dating myself, by the way. Okay, so to study mechanical engineering and manufacturing engineering, and then I started working for companies, design a few hundred products, started 4 companies in between, and in the middle, my midlife crisis was to go back to school. So I went to MIT, and I studied engineering and management. So I was there for 2.5 years, and the first year I got a fellowship from Mr. Ratan Tata. So he came there and he picked a few people and said, okay, do this, go to developing countries, find problems in developing countries and come back to MIT and create solutions for them. And he paid for my whole education, living expenses, scholarship, everything. And that was my inspiration, and then he said, go to India, use India as your sandbox. So I went and traveled all across India, went and stayed in villages and tribal villages to understand what is the life like. Because all my life when I was in India, I never actually left never actually went into all these places, and never actually saw the life in rural India, even though I'm from rural India, in the sense in the really poorer part of the country. So when I came back, I had a very different understanding of what was happening there. And I came back and said, there is a couple of interesting observations I had. One was the people are just as smart and intelligent even in the most rural villages as in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Second is problems. There are more problems to be solved in India and developing countries, and problems are opportunities that are unrecognized. So, if you can create solutions for these problems, can you turn people into innovators and excuse me, and entrepreneurs? And if you can change that, you can change the community from the bottom up. So Mr. Tata, I pitched it to him, and he said, "Okay, go do it." Okay, and that became my work. And let me see if I can share the screen. Okay, so today my goal is to see, can you create 1 million innovators and entrepreneurs across the world, primarily from developing underserved communities. So we all have it in us to do this. There is, we may think only some people are born that way, so only some people can do these kind of things. It's not true at all. We all have the innovative skills, and we can actually discuss that later. So I know, Deepa, you have seen this part of it before, so currently we have a larger crisis of joblessness. We went through, after COVID, we lost 1 billion jobs, and question is, how do we create jobs post-COVID world? Post-COVID, the complete world has changed. Question is, it is not just the job, even lifestyles and everything has changed. Okay, so the question here is, how do you create jobs? We found that entrepreneurs have been positive job creators for the last 50 years across the world. This is primarily in the US. Existing companies have been negative job creators. That means every time there is a financial crisis, people lose jobs, their revenues come down, and such. So it has been entrepreneurs have been creating these jobs and keeping the economy buzzing for a long time. So yes, entrepreneurs create jobs. Everyone knew that. The real question is, can you create entrepreneurs? And that is where the really crux of the question is, where if you look at existing entrepreneurship programs anywhere in the world, they primarily pick a few aspiring entrepreneurs, kids. Primarily, I call them kids because my kids are in college and beyond. So the youth, young in the 20s, we aspire. Those who aspire to become entrepreneurs, we train them to start companies. My thought was, can we go down to the larger majority of the people in the community, and how do you start to change their thinking? If you can change that, it is going to change everything downstream. So in a university, you have students. Some of them aspire to become entrepreneurs, some of them become student entrepreneurs, some of them become experienced entrepreneurs. And the conversion ratio is about several thousands to one. So if you look at your own college that you studied in and say how many students graduated in the last 10 years and how many of them started a company while they were students, and it is about a few thousands to one. If you go to MIT, it may be about 50 to one. If you go 10 miles outside of Cambridge, it drops to several thousands to one. So what is the magic that's there that actually changes this conversion ratio? And thousands to one is well below potential, because I believe there is a much higher potential, as you'll see later. So my goal was to see, can you train the kids who never thought they could be entrepreneurs or innovators and bring them up to what I call the pre-entrepreneurs, where you have built the skill set and mindset and the confidence and aspiration to take the first step. And if you could bring them up to that point, then the existing programs can pick them up and then do the rest of the job. Now, the framework I created, again, this is from my own life experience. So when I went to my professor and at MIT Sloan,
recording in progress.
When I told him this is what I want to do, and his first question is, how do you do that? How do you do? How do you know how to convert people's thinking? And then I said, I would like to take my life where I started and see, can I split my whatever happened in my life into stages and see what kind of stimuli I had at different stages and what kind of changes I had in me. And if I could go test it out on others to see if I gave them those stimuli, would they change? And that becomes the experiment. So I created these experiments and stages and things like that. I went through several bottles of nice red wine to even think about all the things that happened 30, 40 years back, so what kind of things change and such. So we start with what I call zero. Zero just means uninitiated kids who never thought they could do a lot of things, and which is quite a lot of, majority of the kids, by the way. And the first stage was to inspire them to be creative, curious. How do you build that confidence that they can learn? How do you build that ability to self-learn? And that was if you can do that, you have already on a different orbit by then. So I started with these programs, a 2-day program where I would bring kids from schools, high school, just pre-university kids, and teach them design. I teach them CAD and coding and mechanical design and electronics, and they create products. These are kids with no past experience before, and they have to create something in 2 days, a working prototype of a concept, and demonstrate it. And he was making some baby cradle where when you put the baby, it starts to rock the baby. It doesn't solve any world problems. It's completely useless in any other world, okay? But the fun is they have started to connect spatial design, system design, logic design, user experience design, all put together to create something that someone could use. Then these are some of the experiments when I was doing these workshops. These are 13 and 15-year-old kids in Kuala Lumpur schools. They made this magic wand that sends out messages when you shake it. They did all these things, okay? Or 6th graders in Ho Chi Minh City, where they were making this robot that kicks balls and goalpost that scores goals, and they 3D printed the ball, the boot. They programmed the Arduino those servo motors and all these kind of things. And these are the kids who did it. And they do not have an engineering degree, and they only had 2 days to learn. Okay, and the first thing you realize is that children do not have these negative limiting beliefs that I cannot do certain things, I won't be able to do, and all these. Adults have that. Children don't have it. And they just jump in and go do things. As we grow older, we start to build those kind of walls. I'll actually get to that later. The next stage is that of an innovator. Innovators need to go find problems. The value of a solution is not in the solution you created, but in the value of the problem you're addressing. So if the value of the problem is higher, whatever the solution that you create, you have a higher value. If you solve the non-problem, you do not have any value. But nobody teaches our students. None of us, we could write exams and give answers in all our exams, but nobody taught us, given a situation, what is the right question to ask? What is the problem that you should solve? If I gave you a situation, can you identify the problem and can you solve them? That kind of training we do not get in schools. So I went into problem identification, critical thinking, these kind of training for these children. And the last stage is that of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur needs to identify an opportunity, extract value by financial terms or on social impact. They're all systems thinkers. The maker thinks within the product system, electrical, mechanical, and such. Basically, all the techies are product system thinkers. Uh, Innovators are problem system thinkers. What is a problem? Who creates it? Who suffers? What's the value? What's the pain of the problem? Uh, and then an entrepreneur is a business system thinker. That means, how do you transform the problem into an opportunity? What's the value there? Who's your customer? How do you reach them? And how do you put together a team to capture it? So current entrepreneurship programs start here. My thinking is, if I could start with children at this stage, they can actually grow up into entrepreneurs. So that became the whole model. And I want my students to fail. I want them to fail over and over, and learn from it, and learn to learn from it. So question is, when things go wrong, either we can all say, oh my God, it broke, or when a project or a complex system fails, the whole system doesn't fail. The cause of the failure may be something deep inside. Your job is to debug your system, to go find it. And the only opportunity you get to do these kind of things is when you have a failure, and do not waste a failure, But I build in failure into their whole learning system. So the framework is very simple. You zero, maker hacks things, innovator hacks problem, entrepreneur hacks opportunities. And what I found is, initially I started my training, my experiment with college students. And you soon realize that by the time they are in their 20s, the world has already done its damage on all of us. We all are victims of our school system, education system, where we all go in with all the creativity, and school systems slowly start to chop off and make us all think in the same straight line, and we kind of lose our confidence, our creativity while going through this. So my thought was, what if I can actually start with children in schools? So I created these programs called STEM Lab, Mini Lab, and Maker Lab and such. STEM Lab primarily was, I used to go into villages in Indonesia and in Gujarat and all that places, and ask children to bring trash, and we design all kinds of things with it, musical instruments and such. Mini Lab was primarily a study to see what is the impact of a mentor on children. If you really look back in your own life, there were mentors who changed you, and you may not have recognized it. So in my case, I think I give my whole change in my life to this local radio repair guy in Chirenge, who showed me what is inside a radio. And he helped me, when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, how to do some of those kind of things. And that got me into engineering and everything else. And that too, it's not about a couple of days. That's all I had. And that kind of changed me. Question is, can you create these kind of change by creating mentors? So I went around in villages in Gujarat, and I gave young adults wheels and motors and such, and asked them to create robots that play football, soccer. But they had to make it with the children in the village. Okay? And so all it had was just switches, which turn, when you flip the switch back and forth, it changes the polarity of the motor, and so you can actually control it as a robot. Okay? And these children, that was the first time they ever got to play with things like that. And the only flat place we could find in the village was in front of a mandir. Okay, so that is a deep village, where the local village school picked it up and said, okay, we are going to do it every year as an obstacle course. And the primary, largest impact I felt this had was on girls. Because girls, as they grow up, they start to hear from everyone that these things are only for boys. Technology is for boys, okay, or something. And unfortunately, at some young age, they start to believe it. And once they believe it, then they start to, you know, choose what to study and what life trajectory to take, what career to take, based on the belief that I cannot learn these kind of things. It is the rest of the world that has told them. It is not, you know, they're just equally intelligent, you know. There is absolutely no difference in, you know, in them. So here these 10-year-old kids are making, you know, super complex robots in the village. So the last experiment I tried was to create, you know, a maker lab. This is a whole maker lab. You know, there's a 3D printer, all kinds of electronics, motors, hand tools, power tools, meters, everything else. And I made several of these maker labs in a box and tried this experiment in rural government schools to see how you can watch them change. And 10 schools in Malaysia on the border with Thailand, and 7 schools outside Mysore, primarily in the farming villages. And I brought 6 students and 2 teachers, taught them how to do this, gave them the lab, asked them to take it back home, play with it, teach each other, and come back and show what you have created. So this was in Malaysia on day 1. These are 13 and 14-year-old children. Their first task was to assemble their own 3D printers, which came as a kit from China. You know, they didn't know which way to hold a screwdriver, how to tighten a screwdriver. Used to teach them righty tighty, lefty loosey, you know, so that they know which way to then assemble the first 3D printer, then learn CAD, design something like a name tag or something, and print before lunch on day 1. Okay, and these are 13, 14-year-old children. Most of them did not speak English, and they had no problem doing it. And I can almost hear adults saying, "Oh my God, how can kids do this?" Okay, and this is not any problem with the kids. It's our own filters that are, you know, triggering these kind of thoughts, saying why others can do this. And this is in Mysore. And unfortunately, these children had not used a computer. So on day 1, I had to start with, this is mouse, this is where you type Google. By end of first day, all these kids were doing exactly the same thing. They were creating CAD, they were putting together electronics, they were writing code to make little toys. Okay, and once you challenge them, you stand back and you realize that they actually go out and figure it out. So, yes, these children who had never touched these kind of things could do all these kind of stuff. And so I had to do a contrast analysis. And this is Phillips Exeter Academy, maybe one of the top high schools in the US. It is pretty close for me here. And this is where Mark Zuckerberg studied. This is a feeder school to Harvard. You know, $80,000 a year to study in high school, by the way. Okay. And so I went there and taught the same thing, to see what changes. And these are all children from very, very wealthy families. Okay, so what I found is that the learning rate, the d by dt, the rate of learning that they go through is exactly the same in the most expensive school with the richest kids, from the most professional, you know, parents and such, or from Mysore, from village kids, you know, whose parents are, you know, farmers and auto drivers and such. The ability to do things are exactly the same. So I was trying to measure what's a learning agility, you know, the self-learning skills, the curiosity, the research abilities and such, social engagement. How do they work with each other? How do they communicate? Listening skills, leadership, you know, empathy. How is their innovation skills? You know, critical thinking, problem solving, design, CAD, coding, you know, all kinds of techie stuff. Then entrepreneurship attitudes. Self-efficacy, which is the confidence to take on unknown challenges, you know, resilience, opportunity sensing, you know. And when you really look at it, you know, there is no difference it doesn't matter where these kids are from. They already have exactly the same abilities. Now the question is, we are not, as a society, we are not triggering them, we are not training them. And by the time they reach their 20s, it's kind of too late to change the whole thing around. And So there is a window of opportunity which is maybe under 15 years when these kids can learn all kinds of things. And during those times, you are stuffing their head with history and all kinds of things, not their own abilities to learn on their own. I'll actually come to that. So yes, innovation and entrepreneurship can be nurtured. Now the question is, if I need to reach 1 million, how do you reach 1 million? And the primary tool is by creating ecosystems. And as part of my thesis, the first experiment I did was in Marbacilius College, Trivandrum, So I went there and taught for 5 weeks every day for 2 hours. I took 50 students and taught them from 2013 Christmas all the way to middle of January 2014. And this is a picture from 2014 when I was a young boy, and there are 23 of the students who were out of the whole class. Out of the 23, 11 of them did their first startup in 2014. Okay. Out of the 50, 24 of them did their first startup. So that is now the conversion ratio is 2 to 1. So it only took 5 weeks and 2 hours a day of triggering them, taking them through this process, helping them learn this to change their mindset. Okay. First year in 2014, they started 11 startups in a school that only had 1 student startup the previous 12 years. And now they have their own ecosystem. This is a principal who said, they changed in academics. For the first time, students started going to foreign universities and startups emerged, but that was primarily a byproduct. Now, same thing happened in Malaysia. We started with 60 students. Over a matter of 9 months, there were 150 students in schools. They were designing and creating all kinds of interesting things. These are the kids in Malaysia, in Mysore. The kids who had not had a computer. So we had to give them 6 computers. We gave them, asked the teachers to use their phone as for their internet. And in a matter of 6 months, they came back and they were showing IoT-based light control and all these kind of other designs that these 13, 14-year-old children did. So this is the Minister of Education of East Timor, which is the country on the eastern end of Indonesia. We got its independence in 2005. And this is the lab I set up with UNDP, where again I brought young adults, taught them these kind of things, took them out into the farms and fields to go find problems, the valuable problems, and create solutions. And now they are actually going out and teaching in school kids. This is in Dili, East Timor. For the last 2 years during COVID, I was doing this online, where I would send out kits of all kinds of electronic stuff, and they would design with it, learn to. This is in IIT Palakkad, and this is in South Africa, school kids in South Africa, same thing. This is me sitting in this chair. That's a view from Cape Town. Or in villages, primarily poorer villages in the US. I did this program in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, doing it in New Hampshire, in a city where the school kids are close to about 40% of them were below poverty level. And in Oakland, California, exactly, you must have heard of it's poor, very, very poor communities, because kids grow up seeing their others, I should say, the role models that they see, they follow. Unfortunately, the role models are not the best ones to follow. So they get in the circle of crime and drugs and everything else. And so there is generational poverty, in these places. And the only way to change them is to change them while they're children. So yes, I ran about 100 or so workshops around the world and set up these kind of ecosystems in different parts of the world. So this is what I've learned. We are leaving behind millions of kids, never giving them an opportunity to even recognize their abilities. And by the time we ask of them to contribute to the society, it is too late. They don't have the confidence or the skills to do any of those things. Mentors are the catalyst of change. reach. If you can create a mentor reaches 10 people, and the 10 grow up and become mentors and reach 100 people, so you can actually uh, scale it really fast. Early intervention is critical. An entrepreneur is not born at 20. She's born at 5 to 10 years old. Okay, it is entrepreneur doesn't mean she goes and starts a company. It means that she starts to think differently, than others, and that you can change the beginning of the story of a child, and you can change the entire story. So we need to kind of start with them very early on. So need of the hour is skills, not degrees, and also creating job creators, not job seekers. So there's a larger learn crisis going on today, and that is primarily due to COVID. Of the loss of learning, there's a serious deficit that is building up. So this is from a newspaper in New Hampshire, which said in the last 2 years, the number of students with Fs who failed in one or more subjects have gone from 15 to 50 times in schools. So these children, many of them cannot keep up with class because 2 years education did not happen. They may drop out. Schools are pushing them up to the next level, and now they're going to be in a position where they don't even have prerequisite learning. So they're going to be in a still harder place, and they're going to have failures and dropouts more. These students are going to go into colleges without enough qualification. They're going to go into workforce in the next few years. So this deficit in learning doesn't go away if COVID goes away. This is going to create a standing wave for the next 20 years. Okay, this is the same kids who are going to go through this. And this is going to affect poor communities disproportionately. Imagine what has happened in India during COVID. Students could not go to school. Most of them did not have computers and such at home. So they lost their learning. And now they're already 2 years older, but their learning is still 2 years back, So how do we address this? So I believe the skills that you need for today are creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, and self-learning. All the standard curricula of subject is not as valuable, because what the industry is asking of today's graduates is very different from it. Doesn't matter if you know your history or anything else. Okay, do you have the ability to learn on your own? Do you have the critical thinking ability? Can you create? So we're working with schools to see, can you create zero to maker programs into schools where they can get this experiential learning and build these kind of ecosystems in schools. So this is what I'm currently working in. I'm working with a school in Tokyo, in places in the US and such. So is corporations any different? There is no difference. These are exactly the same skills that the corporations need, the employees within corporations need. So, interestingly, you have a whole bunch of folks in customer-facing employees who talk to customers. It could be sales folks, it could be tech support, it could be service or whatever else. There's a whole bunch of people who are touching the customer. So they get to see what the customer is facing, what kind of problems the customer is facing. But can you synthesize their observation and take it up so the managers can see which way to change the path of the company, or what is the new thing that we need to take on, or what additional thing that we need to change. Interestingly, what happens is that this connection happens, but observing what is happening, synthesizing that observation, and understanding trends in the market. So when I'm when I worked with multiple companies, on this the program called innovation intervention, primarily how do you design things and how do you create your own disruption? Because if you do not create your disruption, somebody else will do it for you. And how do the team within a company start to see better ways of doing things? So I did this for all these companies. Ran multiple programs for teaching employees within AirAsia. CEO had come to my lab and he said, "You should do this for my team." So I did it for 2 years. Every quarter they would send me 40 people and such. So question is, this is creativity, critical thinking, problem solving skills are not just for schools, not just for entrepreneurs. It's for entrepreneurs. It's for changing the direction of the company. In any company, it doesn't matter. So with that, this is what I'm shooting for. Inshallah, hopefully we get there. With that, I can take any questions. Please turn on your mic and ask, so everyone can, also your camera if you can.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing some wonderful ideas and views. That was indeed an eye-opening session. Now it's time for the QA session. Reflectors, you may raise your hands or message in the chat window so that I can call you out.
Be curious.
I want to ask Rajesh a question.
Sure.
Rajesh, you spoke about what you're working on today, but can you also tell us a little bit more about all the innovations that you yourself have done in your previous jobs and in your university stint and so on? Some highlights that will be very
Sure. Yeah. So, as a product, I came to the US where I sold the product I designed at Indian Institute of Science, and I bought those days US dollar was 12 rupees. Okay, and I bought my flight ticket with that to come to my grad school. So I designed the first computer terminal which you could hold in your hand. Those days it was RS-232, and so you could actually go change. That is a product I designed as my master's thesis. So with that, I have done products in. My last company was in designing thermal management, heat management inside electronic boxes. So telecommunication boxes which would have 10,000 watts in a 5-foot tall product. 10,000, which is like 2 home stoves running at the same time. Okay, that's the amount of heat that is put out. But no device can see more than 40 degrees C. Imagine if you have 10,000 watts of heat put into a closed space, but the temperature cannot go more than 40 degrees. That means you need to have air moving all the time, controlling all those. So that was, I jumped into that space, not that I knew anything about it. I found that when products were getting smaller and semiconductors were getting smaller, because chips used to be much larger and then it got smaller and smaller, there was a miniaturization, the trend towards miniaturization. And I felt, this is in 1995, 96, I felt that before the challenge to miniaturization comes in, the larger challenge would be heat removal. How do you take out the heat from inside these boxes? And so I started a company called Degree C, Degree Control, and that I ran it for 20 years and I sold it. Within that, I designed all kinds of things for Apple, GE. GE CT scanner has things that I designed, missile launchers through Lockheed Martin, to just all kinds of companies. We used to design things for them. And my product dearest to my heart my first patent was when my daughter was born. Uh, as young parents with no understanding of how this little, what to do with this little thing, like, this is a supercomputer with just one alarm signal, okay, like, anything she cries, okay, that's it. And you need to decode the crying to figure out what she wanted to know. Is she hungry, she's diaper is wet, or whatever else. So the funny thing is that I used to get yelled at by my wife because this girl used to get diaper rash because she sits in that dirty diaper, and my job was to change on time. And I'm like, so here I'm analyzing, saying one is an independent event, dependent is a deterministic event, which is when I change a diaper. The other one is I don't know when she actually wets it, and the time period between the two is what is actually causing it. So what if I can make other one also deterministic? So first thing I did was to design a little circuit thing, and I put 2 safety clips on a diaper and put 2 wires. I connected it to the thing, put a battery and put a speaker, and wrote some code to make it play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I would sleep, and suddenly I hear Twinkle Twinkle and say, yes, I need to go change a diaper. Okay, so of course she had wires coming out of the crib and all those kind of things. Okay, like, so, so this is the problem with a techie. Okay, like, you do experiments on everyone. Then that became a patent, that became a product, it became a self-learning thing to toilet train the baby, and then I started my first company with that, and I miserably failed. So there's a whole story of what I learned from that separately. But that is where I realize that it is the projects that fail. It is not the entrepreneur that fails. Entrepreneur learns. Okay, because there's a million ways things can go wrong, and when you're starting for the first time, you cannot cover everything anyways, and things will go wrong. And but finally I realized I could actually manage 80% of it. Yeah, some 20% went wrong. So I went and started the second company. I got the a little bit more. I had some other things that go wrong. So yes, these are the experiments in being an innovator and entrepreneur. Which you need to start with this thing, saying there's a good chance I'm going to fail, and I should have a way out in my mind. Most often that doesn't happen, because when you're scared of failure, fear occupies your mind more than its fair share. Okay, and what happens is that when fear occupies your mind, you start to think about failing more often than succeeding, and you make safe decisions, because what happens if I fail? And once you start to do that, then there is no edge. For an entrepreneur, there are only 2 edges that an entrepreneur has. Entrepreneur can act on something faster than a large company. An entrepreneur can take the craziest decision, which others would not take. If you do not take these 2 to your advantage, every other established company can kill you. So, but entrepreneurs are not risk takers; they're risk managers. Where if I get an idea, I'm not going to go sell my house and put all these things into the new company. No, for I may put $100 and see, is the problem real? Go check with a few people. Maybe $1,000 to see how many people, go do some more study to see if the problem is real. Maybe $100,000 to make the first set of prototypes and see if people would like it. And at every single stage, I'm changing the probability or the risk that I have. I'm risking, as I'm investing more, I'm reducing my risk. It's not that you just go in with all the risk. So those are the kind of hard learnings that you go through. When you have no experience in running a company, but you step in and you start to do it, and you start to analyze everything from first principles. Sometimes you come up with ways that others would never try. Sometimes you come up with ways that are already established. Others have already done it, or sometimes you do things which are so you think it is all fine, and there are reasons that you haven't realized why it would fail. Okay, and these are the way you learn. So yeah, I don't know if I gave a longer answer than you asked. Okay, so
Perfect. Thank you, Rajesh. Yeah, so be comfortable with failure, but fail as fast as possible, and try out the next alternative. Right, that's the way to go. Yeah.
keep the keep the cost of failure low
Right.
as much as possible. Improve your probability of success by getting more information, understanding things. Uh, Most startups, there was a study which was done where they asked 100 or so startups that failed, tell me 3 reasons why you failed, top 3 reasons. And after they analyzed everything, they came back and found that 40% of the companies that went and raised money, started to design their products, put together a team, created the product, started marketing, realized that customers didn't need it. you know
Right.
so that means they had not validated the problem. It sounded so good early on that we put all the money in creating it, not ever validating the problem. So this is where we need to spend 70% of our time in the problem space. So the more longer you stay in the problem space, understand more and more, the solution will emerge. But normally what happens is we are in a hurry to start to design the product because techies are more interested in writing code and creating things. Problem is somebody else's job. So there is innovation is not, there is no department for innovation. There's no department for quality. Okay, because quality is there in every single parts of the company. Innovation also has to be there in every single part of the company. Where innovation means, do I see a interesting opportunity? How do we bring all the people together to create a solution? And innovations don't have to be the largest problem that you're solving. Can we try to solve things, the annoyances, in your business? Like if there's a stuck door and it takes me say 3 more seconds to open the door, it is not such a big deal. It's just an annoyance. But if there are 1,000 people going through the door every day, now the 3 seconds times 1,000 is a larger problem. So
Right.
your small problem times frequency is your opportunity. Okay, but when you look at something small, you said, what's a big deal? Okay, so imagine if things like expense report in a company, I used to hate doing that. And I'm sure nobody enjoys that. Okay, but it has to be done. But we all go through it, and at some point you should say, how can we make it easier for in the process, so you can save maybe 10 minutes in this. But 10 minutes times 10,000 times, that's a frequency that in a year people submit that. It adds up. And so innovations don't need to be, the problems don't need to be large problems. They need to be, it could be small ones with high frequency. So, okay. So again,
You talked about understanding the problem. Someone who mentored me, told me you have to ask 5 or 6 whys to understand what exactly is the problem. And otherwise, it becomes like how some doctors treat you. A tablet for your fever, another one for your fatigue, right? Without understanding, so you're probably treating the symptoms sometimes.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So every symptom. Like Deepa said, there is a thing called 5 whys, and children are really, really good at it. Okay, they keep asking you why, and then you have to say no, but why that? Okay, so if you can't treat a symptom, symptom, if there is poverty and if you go give money to them, all the people who are poor, come back a week later and they're still in the same place. Okay, because you're treating a symptom. But get to the next level. Why is somebody poor? And you say, okay, they don't have money. Okay, that's good. Why do they don't have money? Is it they don't have a job? And why do they don't have a job? Maybe they don't have skills or something else. They can't travel or what. So if you can come deeper and deeper, you find a place where you can solve it with very little money that actually has domino effect downstream to create larger solutions. But no one solution solves the whole problem. Every solution only touches so much percentage of the solution or the problem. But so you need to kind of see, if I could implement this, there may be 15% improvement in certain things. That is good. Okay, don't go for 100% solution in anything, because it is very, very difficult to get there. Okay, please ask questions. I'm love to hear any.
We have Arun waiting for the next question. Arun?
Sure, Arun, go ahead.
Hi, Rajesh. I am Arun Matthew from Data Practice Team.
Hi, Arun.
Can you kindly recount to us the story of Ncube Labs and the advancement that brought the organization to be perceived as one of the 10 most inventive organizations in the province of New Hampshire?
So Ncube Lab was started when I finished my MIT program. I started it to continue what I was doing as my thesis. And once I started the company, immediately MIT sent me to Malaysia as a professor in the new business school that MIT started. So I was there for 6 years. And I came back last year back to the US. And so I restarted Ncube Labs from back again. And I was talking to a few people about what I would really want to do, start to solve the problem at the core. Most of the social problems of crime, poverty, everything really comes down to, if you can change the child a little bit, change the life trajectory by a few degrees, you can make a larger change. And how do you do that? And this is all my work for the last 9 years. And somebody heard this, and I have no idea how it reached them. So the newspaper gave me a call, and they had interviewed me, and they said, oh my God, this is exactly what the country needs. And then they gave us one of the top innovative companies in New Hampshire, award. Okay, but that's all just happenstance. Okay, it just so happened. But the question is, they recognized it as something that the country needs. Country in the sense, not just US, even India or any other country. So that was the story. I still don't know how they heard about me, by the way.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Next, we have Tirtha PM with a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Rajesh. Good morning.
Hi. Morning.
This is Tirtha. I'm from the HR Talent Acquisition team.
Go ahead.
Okay. So my question is, you have invented or you have patented for over 16 innovative gadgets. So of all of this, which one is the most selling one? Could you please share with us?
So first thing is, if I were to ask today, should I patent anything, I would say no. Okay. The value of a patent is, in legal terms, it is just the right to sue somebody. Okay, and the patent only gives you the right to go sue. And if other person has more money, they can kind of drain you down through legal fees. At the end of the day, so patent is not and only very few of them got patented. So I'll actually talk about the thing I did not patent. That is more interesting, because so some of the patents, one of the patents became a whole division. It got Japan's Green Technology of the Year award for the patent, and did several products with that. But this, for the one I did not patent, is more interesting. So when I finished my my UMass Amherst master's program and started my started as a designer uh, with a company. We had AT&T. No, this is in Massachusetts. So AT&T, at that time, AT&T used to make telecommunication boxes. This is in '89, before a lot of you were born, I'm sure. Okay, so they came to us and said, we have been trying to solve a problem. Can you guys take a look at this? And I said, what is it? And so he called me to come to Illinois. So we went there and he said, this is a huge new circuit switches that is, like the fast 20,000 connections at a time, of course, which is small compared to what we have now. Uh, so they said, we have these fans at the bottom pushing air through these things. And we have 6 fans. And when all the fans are running at full speed, they have something called the beat vibration. Do you know what a beat noise is? Beat noise is when there's a frequency difference. If one is running at, say, 1000 RPM and the other one is running at 1010 RPM, you will hear a 10 RPM frequency. It's building up and down. Even when you sit in propeller planes, if the 2 propellers are not tuned, you can hear the noise up and down. So that is in the sound. It also does a vibration. So if there's a 1 hertz difference, every 1 second, it will actually shake and stop. And they said, we can't control this, and it is causing all the connections to come loose. The chips are coming out of the chip socket, and these are telecommunication boxes which needs to have 99.999% availability. So they cannot have this thing fail. With the whole city is actually talking through this box, and we are having this serious issue. Can you solve it? So as fresh engineers with absolutely no experience in any of these things, I said, sure. Okay. And the moment they heard sure, they said, okay, then you're going to go take it and solve it. And I came back to my office with all the fans and assemblies and said, I really don't know what to do. Okay, really, I thought it should be a good physics project. Okay, so I said yes. So then I opened up all the fans and I started tracing the circuit of the fan and all the commutation circuit and all those kind of things. And I said, I should be able to control the speed of the fan. So I connected one more wire and I could connect it to a microprocessor and change the signal going into the fan, and then I could connect all 6 of them and I could synchronize all the 6. So I could take a stroboscope and show that all the fans are like running at exactly the same frequency, frame RPM. And this, we took it back to AT&T, they put it down and the noise completely went away. And these guys said, oh my God, you actually could do this? I said, the AT&T engineers could not do it. So then they said, okay, can you write a specification for what these fans should do? I said, okay, I'll do that. I'm a young engineer, wrote the whole technical specification on how the fan should be controlled. And they sent it out to all the fan vendors saying, can you please make this change to your fan? And we designed the controller and everything else. So long story short, now every single fan that you see in your laptop, in your computers, in just about every single device, they'll have 4 wires, red, black, yellow and blue. And those are the colors I specified in 1989. Okay, and today that's about a $5 billion industry, and I didn't patent it. So that is a story of, innovation. Innovation is innovation, and it doesn't matter what the value is. Capturing the value is an entrepreneur's job. Okay, creating a solution is an innovator's job. And so I did the first part. I did not know how to do the second part. So yes, I don't know if that's an interesting story.
Thank you for answering that question. Next, Alex, do you have a question to ask?
Hi, Rajesh.
Hi.
My name is Alex Karia. So my question is, can you tell us more about TechTop initiative?
TechTop initiative is something I started in 2005. So last company degree C, I started a design center in Kavdiyar in 2003, 2002 or 2003. So, and I used to come to, because now that we have a design center, I was coming almost twice a year or something like that to work with all the engineers. So one thing very interesting I noticed is that when I was when I was a kid growing up in Kerala, we did not have TV. We had a radio. That was the whole technology we had. We didn't not have a refrigerator. We did not have microwave, of course. Uh, and evenings, there was a lot of reading. We had, that is all we are supposed to do your homework, read, and then get to bed. Then you eat. So when I was coming back quite often, my nieces and nephews, all I saw was evenings they were watching MTV, and the whole culture of what we used to do when we were kids has completely changed. Okay, so for them, and so I was initially, I did not recognize it when I found that our heroes were the people who can hit a ball with a bat, and people who can sing and act around sing and run around a tree and all those kind of things. Okay, but the actors and musicians or even sportsmen, they do not create the economy of a country. Okay, they create money for themselves, of course, and a few people around them, but they do not create 10,000 jobs. They do not create billions of dollars of revenue or foreign exchange to the country. So I felt that I need to do something about it. So I told my team, I said, how do we do something to inspire young engineering students to take up innovation? So in 2006, we created this program called Tech Top, Innovation Competition, national level. In 2006, it was in the Kottaram, near museum, first time. And then second year on, it was at Technopark. We ran it for 9 years from Technopark. Okay, and we had engineering students from all across India would come with the innovations that they have created, and they would come and show it. We would pay them for them to travel to Trivandrum and exhibit them. People wrote about them, gave them some appreciation on their innovation skills, and that boost their morale, and it basically boosts their courage, and they go back and do other things. So this was the primary goal of Tech Top. I started it, and we ran it every single year. With primarily, I funded it, okay, personally, and then when we introduced teaching these students how to innovate, so I ran these kind of courses. 2 years, I brought MIT students to India, and they were part of the same program in 2015 and 2017. I taught them how, so they came and stayed with me for a month with 20 of students from MIT with other students from all across India. We used to live together, and for a month, I had my 3D printers, all electronics. So we were designing and creating things all night. Every day we were making stuff, going out and finding next problem, come back and do this. So we kind of brought in the culture and technology and all these kind of things from different people, and that started changing these students. And 2017, I ran the program at IIT Delhi and at IIT Mandi, all as part of Tech Top. Then we ran out of money. Okay, so it is last year we did not do much. Only thing we did was to run a program for some schools in Mysore. What I really want to do with Tech Top now is to create it as a because the innovation programs are already there from so many other Intel, and so many others have come up with these programs. What I would really like to do is to train next generation mentors. How do we take college students train them on all these things, give them the skills and some stipend, and say, go teach in schools. Go to schools and inspire all these kind of kids, and you can start to change the community from the bottom up. Okay, and this is what I'd like to do. And since I haven't been to India in quite some time, I've trying to see, you guys can be part of this mentor program and start to change, because you are creating positive change. You don't recognize it at this point. You can reach hundreds of children who suddenly the switches have been turned on, and they aspire higher. They find their way to learn and do all the rest of it. So that's what I want to do at this point. It is still a non-profit. It's a non-profit based out of Trivandrum. It is currently, my dear friend is retired brigadier, my classmate. He's the head of it, but we really want to restart it all over again. I talked to Niti Aayog on this, on the head of Niti Aayog, not Amitabh Kant, Chintan Vaishnav. So, and they said if you can do this, they'll help us scale it. So this is where we are. And if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear. I'd love to, but I don't have people to run it. That's where I am. Questions?
Thank you, Professor. Just one last question.
Sure.
That's from my side. I'm Sandeep M.A. I'm actually a machine learning engineer. So my question will be, your life and achievements are outstanding. We have been honored by a visit from Edison itself. So what inspires you to continue with so many innovations? And a sub question, how can we, the reflections, help you going forward?
So innovation primarily is out of curiosity. If you see something, why is it happening this way? And you start to dig deep and you realize the problem is something that you can very easily do. And all the techies have that already. Okay, that spirit to go solve a problem. Now, spirit to go solve a problem viably is a different story. That is where the entrepreneur comes in. Okay, and at this stage, I'm 60 years old. Okay, at this point, what I want to do is to set this. How do I reach these million kids all over the place? So what I'm trying to do now is create an online ecosystem where kids anywhere in the world can join. They can create they can learn how to do things. They can teach each other how to do things. They get different badges and certificates, and they create a portfolio of all the things that they have done. So by the time you're in your 12th grade, you should have 5 years of stuff that you have created, portfolio of all the projects, techie stuff that you created, that you can demonstrate to others. You have skills, certificates to show that. So when you apply for college, or when you apply for a job, you should have this portfolio that can help you. MIT takes students, they don't care about degrees. They have taken students who have not passed their high school from India for undergrad. I know my friend, he didn't even finish his engineering college and he joined for masters. They look for what crazy things have you done which others don't dare do. Okay, and how do you show that you have done all these things? Today with something like this, if you can train these kids early, you can create the portfolio. And I think they should be able to get into Stanford and MIT and Harvard with the kind of 5-10 years of things you can show. And if you can create a platform that can help spread, that's one thing. But from reflections, I would really like to see how we can scale the mentor development program in India. That would be way more impactful in India at this point, and it will change the youth. Youth would become more employable, because imagine if you took a college dropout or even a high school dropout, it doesn't matter. If once they learn how to solve problems, design things, create things, write code, now he or she can go for a job and say, look at all the things I have done. It doesn't matter what your degree is or if you passed college or whatever. Nobody really cares about degree at this point. Okay, it's what are the demonstrable skills that you have. If you have those demonstrable skills, you can make them more employable, and within a year they could actually go get a job that they would never be able to get previously. If you can, I'm just talking about the young adult. While this young adult is making impact on school kids who become them later. So this is absolutely a virtuous cycle that you can build, and I'd love to get all the help from Reflections and see how we can even pull this off.
Thank you, Professor, for the answer. Reflectors, since we need to keep the time, let's cut short the Q&A session. Next, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Arun Matthew for giving the word of thanks. Arun, the floor is yours.
Before that, Sandeep, if I could just respond to Rajesh. Rajesh, so the team has heard you. So we will have some internal sessions to determine how we can help you. We'll come back to you with ideas.
Wonderful. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Very nice.
Go ahead, Sandeep. Sorry.
Not a problem. Thank you. Arun?
Good morning, Professor Rajesh, dear Deepa, leaders, and my dear reflectors. I am Arun Matthew from Data Practice team. It is a matter of pride for me that I got a chance to give vote of thanks at this event today. On behalf of everybody in Reflections, I thank you, Professor Rajesh, for sparing your invaluable time to brighten this day and enlighten us with your commendable experiences. It is past midnight for you, and I won't keep you waiting for longer. Thank you for answering all the questions we had and for encouraging us to think and be creative. We all are inspired by your great words. Thank you. A very big thanks to dear reflectors for being here and for the enormous cooperation during the event. Thank you all and have a great day.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Arun,
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Yeah. See ya.
Good night, Rajesh. Bye.